Welcome to Life Mastery for Women. I'm your host, Jen Mack, Lady of the Mind. I've been studying mind mastery and emotional management and energy work and its connection to spirituality for over 25 years. And in this podcast, I help guide you out of your daily struggles in life in the areas of health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality. Life is hard, but your daily growth doesn't have to be. Join me 3 times a week as I lead you inward on a healing, connecting, and creating journey. Let's go get that nugget of inspiration towards your transformation.
Hey ladies, it's Amy.
And Jen Mack, Lady of the Mind.
Welcome to today's episode where we hope we are finding you
getting the support you need for the success you want.
And if you are not, then it is our intention that in today's episode,
you get just one nugget of inspiration towards your transformation. So hello everyone. We're all here today again.
We are.
For a very special episode with my girly girl, Amy. Welcome to the show.
I've been upgraded. Did you all notice? I got to be part of the intro today.
Yeah, we're going to have to do another recorded intro that gets to be the beginning because I have another that's just a recorded, that section that gets added. But wow, I had to type it all up so she could read it. And she did really good. She sounded really good.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I needed a script. She's like, just say this, this, and this. And I was like, whoa, no, I'll mess that up.
And I'm like, really? Haven't you been listening to my podcast this whole entire time? Don't you have it on repeat? She's like, yeah, but I can't.
I can't repeat it. I can't say it.
I can't memorize it.
No.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, I think today we should be talking about how important it is to have support in your spiritual journey.
Yeah. Well, and even still, when we are going to just going through life, we don't want to go through life by ourselves.
Of course not.
And so having the support is vital to our success, I think.
Well, and then having support, no matter what we're talking about, spiritual or otherwise, but having support from people who are on the same page as you, using the same tools as you, are on the same path as you.
Right. So let's talk about, so because we talk about the spiritual avenue and our spiritual path, and I want to say to awakening, and I teach a lot of tools, but we're going to talk about how you can be a support system, who that person might be in your life. Maybe if you don't have someone in your life, then maybe how Amy and I could be a support system to you, but also how you would use that support person. Because some of the ways that we use support in our lives is not always conducive to our success. Like we can think about, when we complain, we think that we're going to go stand around the works water cooler and complain about the lack of whatever in our workspace. And you're building this community, but you're not building that community on a positive note.
Right. Yeah, you're just perpetuating the same thing happening over and over again. As you say, just continuing to throw out the poop.
Throwing out the dog poop. Well, whatever poop. I mostly just say things just because your laugh is so awesome. I do love it. So we talk about how, we get to this space of solving problems. Now, I want to go back in time, 12 years, actually, when I started my personal development journey. It was probably 95 or 90, probably 96, I think. And I've told everybody that story several times, and I won't repeat it, but mine is definitely a love for books. And obviously very easily Google and YouTube nowadays and having that technology. But I pretty much spent every day in a bookstore trying to solve problems. But when I started dating Amy, it was, having these midnight conversations about metaphysics and law of attraction and the power of our subconscious mind. And as she's dozing off after a long, hard day's work, and I'm like standing on stage at the end of the bed and talking her face off. What were you thinking back then? Like, how do you support someone who you're not really on the same wavelength like that? Like, do you remember what some of the things were that you were doing to help supporting me in these, as I've always been an entrepreneur, really, and so I'm having these big, giant conversations about business and how, even when we weren't really on the same wavelength as far as our knowledge and your knowledge goes, how were you able to support me in that?
Wow, that's a good question. We didn't talk about that question.
Yeah, we didn't rehearse that. I like to catch her off the
off guard
a little bit.
Well, to start with, I did my very best to stay awake. That felt supportive.
And it did for me too.
And sometimes it was hard because it was so late and I was so tired and I was like, I wish you could see my face as I'm trying to hold my eyes open.
Yeah.
But really just listening and holding space and asking some questions at times, because the more we got to know each other, the more I know that for you, teaching what you've just learned helps you to then integrate it into your own life.
The only reason I laughed there for a second is because I know that she was always hesitant to ask questions, because then that meant I was going to go on for another hour about the topic. She's like, I want to ask, and then I don't.
Maybe I'll ask tomorrow.
Because then it's like 1:00 in the morning and she's still fired up and raring to go.
Oh, gosh.
But it's so true, though, for me especially, because I'm such a teacher at heart, that when I learn something, I get excited about it, and the first thing I want to do is teach it, because then I'm starting to implement it, but I'm also starting to share it with the world and people who need it. But let me go back one. For those of you that have never heard the phrase, is holding space.
Oh yeah.
So what does that mean? What does that look like to you?
Well, that term I first learned in Mariposa, and I imagine that on some level it's a skill that a lot of people have and don't really identify it, but it's really just listening to the person that is speaking.
With your whole body.
Let me tell them.
Okay.
You asked me to tell them.
And now you have to talk about what Mariposa is, because you didn't.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, but that's okay. All right, so let's do one at a time. So go ahead and finish holding space.
Okay. So... so you're listening and paying attention, and not listening where you're half listening and doing something else at the same time, but where you're literally paying attention and not on your phone, not picking threads off your clothes, not whatever. You're really listening with your eyes, loving that person with your eyes, and just being present and not waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Actually listening, asking questions as appropriate. But
it's so powerful too, because we don't do that as a society. We don't listen to each other.
No, even you and I mean, we do that, but then there are times that we're multitasking.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then you don't feel listened to, and then you don't feel heard. And so you mentioned Mariposa. So most of our listeners, I don't know that when I talk about it, I usually don't refer to it as a name, just because it's not a. It's not a.
I didn't get my full training before starting our episode today.
So just in your 3 cents, so they know what that means. Mariposa.
Oh, it was a women's retreat that we did. It's the one that you speak of that was so powerful and life-changing for you. And then a few years later, shortly after you went through some intensive training to become a facilitator. And then we did one locally here. And so it was a week-long women's retreat where we learned lots of different tools in life and handling things, some of which we still use, and some that have morphed into other tools.
Yeah. So really that's unfortunately that business now, that's my coach that I also speak of, was running that business. So when I first met her, it was in March, and then I went to the women's retreat that was her business back in June 2013. And then, did this intensive training with her for about 2 years to become a facilitator and a coach. So that's it. So now back to sharing success. So you can have that support from somebody, whoever that somebody is, that just gives you that space to grow and learn. And hopefully you have someone like that in your life. But we wanted to kind of touch base on, like, what are some of the other things that you can do to hold space for somebody else. And
the other thing that we talked about, you and I did before, is an important skill, and something that I provided to you is, even though I didn't know or understand at the time all of the things that you were talking about, I just listened and supported and was not judging. I was accepting of the things that you were learning and the things that you were talking about and the importance of them to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think just kind of stepping in that person's shoes is really understanding that everybody's on a journey. Everybody's on an inward journey, even if it doesn't look like it. We're all just here trying to figure it out. And if we can be in this accepting role of this is a struggle that you're having, how can I best help you and support you in that? I think one of the others, this was like our top 4 traits, and we said those, and we were going to get to it in a little bit, but we said holding space was one. And then I'll let you say this, Amy, too, is, and actually it might be our top 5 traits, because I think I want to add this one in there, but is holding space and listening. And then you want to do those? These are some of the other traits that we would have as someone to support someone else.
Mm-hmm. Things you'd be looking at or looking for in a person. So moving on from, accepting, if you're not in a space of, if you have someone who doesn't have the same knowledge and the same tools that you have, but the ultimate goal, I would think, is to find someone who has similar knowledge as you. Yeah. So as we've learned and grown together, then now I have a lot of those same tools and knowledge that you do. I mean, you're always a few levels ahead of me, but that's okay.
That's okay.
And, but now we have different conversations and different support. Yeah. And so, you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that if someone doesn't have that around them, then we hope to be able to provide that. And so whether it's in, in one of our groups, in one of our chats, in one of our programs, then we are able to be here to support those new things that someone is learning and implementing those new tools.
We just did the 5-day event, and it just ended this last Friday. And my worry is that everyone's all on this high because of what we go through and these epiphanies and these aha moments. And then we come around, to a couple days later as their life starts to unfold in its normal way again, and they kind of sink back into those habits, that it just becomes this little commercial break in their whole life of these aha moments, but then they don't have the support that helps them to continue to implement those tools, because it's in the implementation that life changes.
Well, it's no different than eating different and exercising and any other life change that you want to make. You're constantly course correcting, and you're constantly learning how to reach for those tools. I'm an emotional eater, so my first go-to is to reach for a cookie or reach for a bag of chips. Yep. And so you have to retrain that, and that takes practice, and this is no different.
Well, and that's where I think the support comes in, because you want someone who understands what you're going through, and you want someone who can accept you through that process. Where instead, for me, as a personal trainer, and we go through this transformation together, and then Amy is an emotional eater, that I'm not coming around the corner going, oh, should you eat that?
Right.
Because that's not that, our relationship and our support of one another is at a deeper level that I can't come in at that angle, because that is not accepting of where she is right now, that she's on a journey and she has to come to those decisions and those realizations on her own. And my sarcasm is not going to help her in that moment. And that's going to draw this divide or push this divide between our relationship.
Well, sure. Because then that does not make you a safe place for
totally
me. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and then, of course, you have to have people who have the same lingo that you do. So now, you've gone through that. People who have gone through some of these programming with us, then now they're talking about kinking the hose and throwing out dog poop. And people are like, what now?
There was a time, we have two young dogs. Matter of fact, our littlest dog, Zoe, turned 6 on Monday. Actually,
Tomorrow.
The day this podcast comes out will be
today.
Today's her birthday. And Juju's is at the end of the month on the 30th. And I remember I was in the backyard. Oh, so either way, in the backyard, we're constantly picking up their dog poop, which as your dog owner, you should anyway. But our dogs have the bad habit of eating their own poop, and it is quite disgusting. And we've been working on it for pretty much 6 years now. Anyway, and so I'm in the backyard. Amy's up on the deck, which is a level above me. And I remember I was probably complaining about something, probably the neighbors. And I have the shovel, the little tiny snow shovel in my hand as I'm walking around. The dogs are, going to poop or whatever. So we're all kind of watching. I got the shovel in my hand and I'm complaining about something. And then she goes, "Are you throwing dog poop?" And I look at her, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "I'm not throwing it. Did you see them poop?" And she's like, "No, like your tool about throwing dog poop." I'm like, "Oh yes, I am," because I was, complaining about the neighbors. So this kind of now puts us in that place in the episode where how do we support each other? How do we, when one of us is spiraling or one of us is is going, kind of off the deep end emotionally, is what do we do? And sometimes we jump in the water with them. So one of us is drowning. The last thing you want to do is jump in the water with them.
Yeah.
You want to give them a tool so they can save themselves. And sometimes we do. We jump in the water and with the other person, and then the other person who's drowning originally goes, so did you bring the tube with you?
The life preserver?
The life preserver?
No,
I just jumped in here with you. So talk about how when we are spiraling, is what are some of the, like, how do you remind yourself to reach for that, or how do you fit that into your conversation when I'm diving off the deep end?
It's hard.
It can be hard.
You dive fast.
Yeah.
So you might not dive as often as some, but when you do,
I dive head first.
Head first,
and it's the no splash dive.
Oh yeah, no, you
that
go right
goes
in.
20 feet deep.
Yeah, right in, all the way down. Yeah, gold medal splashing.
I will say this while you're thinking about your response is when you do this work, it doesn't mean that you're never going to face problems or you're never going to react. I react every day, and sometimes several times a day, but it really is in how long are you going to stay in that reactive emotion, or that reactive emotional state. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you'll hear me say it 1,000 times. And the reason I'm saying it 1,000 times is because we all had to hear it over and over again before we started waking up to the idea. But you cannot solve the problem from there. So that leads me to one of the phrases that we use when I or Amy even are diving off the deep end and we're heading into that. But for me, you have to catch it quick. Yes. Amy definitely bounces back a lot faster than I do, but you have to catch it quick. So what is like one of the phrases that you can use to help the other person not to dive off the deep end?
So I would say that one of the biggest things that we are now consistently doing is kind of what you just said, which is reminding each other, okay, you know what, we can't solve the problem from here.
Yeah.
Or we're not going to find the solution from here.
That is such a good way to say it. So explain that. You explain it now in your words, because I explain it often in the episodes, but you explain it in your words. What does that mean? We're not going to solve the problem, or we can't, would you say, make the decision from here?
We can't find a solution from here. Well, our numbers are very, very low, and we are upset, and we're, jumping around, and we're complaining, and so we're all doom and gloom. And so now we can't possibly think of even what any of our possible solutions are at that point.
Yeah.
We're very emotional. We're very upset. We're very overwhelmed.
Right.
Whatever those descriptive words are. Mm-hmm. And so we can't possibly see any solution to this problem.
Right.
Certainly not the one that we're supposed to find.
Well, and if we think about how energy flows, those words, when we're in those stressful situations, is our past programming. And it's our past programming that created the problem in the first place. So when Einstein says you can't solve the problem from the same thinking that created the problem. So we have to then do what?
Raise our numbers.
Yeah.
So even just yesterday, when something happens, then we're like, you know what? Let's get out of here. It's a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
So we packed up the dogs, we got in the car, and we went out for a drive.
Right.
And then now, for a while, we weren't doing what we were supposed to do because we were continuing to talk about what it was. We might not have been as upset, but we were still trying to talk it out and solve the problem. But what we needed to do was just...
Yeah, go have fun.
Focus on having fun.
Right.
And bringing up our numbers.
And we didn't remind even though I think we did remind ourselves, but it was definitely something that was something that we wanted to try to solve. So tell them what were some of the things that we did, or that were the result of us as we continue to try to solve from that number. So we came in, we're at a 2, we're like, okay, we need to get out of the house, we're not going to solve the problem, but yet we continued to what? We tried to solve the problem from that level, and we weren't able. So what was some of the outcomes of the, like, what was the result of us continuing to try to solve from there?
I think our numbers just didn't go up. We didn't really, we didn't really find a solution to the problem.
Right.
We didn't all of a sudden have this amazing idea to turn things around. Mm-hmm. And we also we had an okay time while we were out. We didn't have a bad time, but it wasn't as amazing as it would have been if we had completely set aside what we were talking about and focused on just having fun. And then usually quite naturally, some idea comes to us to solve the problem.
Right. What else were you noticing that were the results of us not stepping out of our own way.
So, I found that we just kept repeating the story. We kept reliving the story, talking about what happened, and we're on this loop, where we're still not finding a solution, but we're continuing to talk about it. And we continued to stress about it, and our feelings ended up kind of either staying the same or going down. They certainly didn't go up, which was what our intent was when we left the house.
And I think as we get to that space and we continue to try to solve from there, we continue to just create or feed the momentum of that emotional state. And then as you're picking up that momentum, you just go from now a little perturbed to frustrated to anger to rage. I mean, you just keep spiraling in that direction.
And here's the other thing. It's hard because we're problem solvers. So when we're in that situation, we want to solve the problem and we want to talk about it and figure it out and then move on.
Yep.
But unfortunately, we just can't. I mean, we've learned over and over again that that's really not how it works. So as difficult as it is to set it aside and just try to feel better and trust that an answer is going to come to you, it's hard sometimes.
That is where it takes the most amount of courage and faith. And once you do it a couple of times, you start recognizing that, oh, if I just kind of put my focus on self-care right now and try not to problem solve from the space, that I can just take some deep breaths, I can get outside, I can literally shift gears into something different with purpose to bring up your own numbers, then solutions, just like you said, start naturally coming. Once you do that a couple of times and you really are present with those moments that you recognize, like, oh my God, like, an hour later, I'm coming out with a solution. I had to go do some deep belly breaths and kind of calm my nervous system down. And we fire out a solution. We feel better. It's amazing. And here's the thing, then we are now more encouraged to do it again.
Well, and that's also coming back around to the whole topic of our episode. That's also where having a support system in place is extremely helpful, because when you're the one that is extremely emotional in that moment, you can't always think of those things.
Right.
You just continue to, as you said, live your past programming and do what you're used to doing. But if you have someone, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a friend, whether it's someone, in our Facebook group, whatever it is that you can reach out to and say, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then that person can say back to you the tool that you need to be using or suggest.
Because when we're in that emotional state, we're fired up. And the only thing that's spewing out of our mouth is past programming, limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, nothing that's helping you.
No.
And so when you're in that emotional state, it's harder and harder to remember to use and pull from that tool. And when I did that years ago, I remember when I was working at a school, we got some training, and the lady that did our school training, she was like, you can control your thoughts. And I'm like, what? You don't have to react in a certain way to your environment. And I'm like, are you joking me? That was a pivotal moment in my personal development, was there going, now, wait a second. Now, I'm dealing with anger on a daily basis and it's lasting forever. And like, normal amounts of time. Abnormal, thank you. Abnormal amounts of time. And this is not right. And, it's getting worse and worse and whatever. And so then as she's telling me that, this was a huge pivotal moment for me. And I remember going, okay, now I can't wait till I'm angry again, because I'm going to try. I'm going to try to control my thoughts. And I remember using the tool where I would, like, as I'm in this kind of fit of anger, is that I would snap my fingers. And I'm like, okay. And I could immediately stop that emotion. And so I would start practicing that over and over and over again, but doing it by myself. I had to be like the front person in my own personal development to try that tool. And then, of course, later I ended up forgetting about that tool and I didn't use it as much. So it stayed in there, obviously, because it's definitely better now. Mm-hmm. And again, you're still going to be reactive. It's just a matter of how long you're going to react. So let's just wrap up. These are we went from top 4 to top 5. And so, Amy, why don't you just close up with the top 5? If you're looking for someone to support you in this successful journey, we definitely know that support is a huge, huge part to being successful in your life, is managing your emotions and mastering your thoughts. And so here's our top 5 traits of a person who could be supportive to you.
All right. So we want someone who hopefully has similar knowledge of the tools that you're trying to use to help in your journey. Someone who is compassionate, someone who listens and is patient, someone who holds space, and then also someone who also does their own work and hopefully similar work to what you're doing. And so then you can collaborate and talk, and then they can also be that supportive person to you.
I will definitely say that when someone else is on the journey of doing their own work and they are open, they're going to be more accepting of you doing your work. You know, if your support person is not doing their own internal dialogue and their internal personal growth, that they are sitting on their own pedestal and going, why is this so hard for you? You know, that I remember seeing a couple long time ago in a place that I worked with the wife, and she was on a nutrition journey and trying to lose weight. And we had gone to a party, like this big school function, and her husband was there. And so there's all this food, and she's putting food on her plate, whatever. And he is literally right next to her saying, "Are you sure you want to eat that? Do you want to eat that?" And it was quite disgusting. And I felt terrible for her, and she kind of clammed up and was pretty quiet. And then he said it. It was several times with like everything she put on her plate. And I just remember thinking that he's not very supportive, and he doesn't have the same compassion for her because he wasn't on that same or similar journey. But the journey, he wasn't on a weight loss journey because that was not his personal struggle, but he wasn't on a journey at all. So he didn't understand the struggle at all. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, my journey and Amy's journey is very different, but I'm on a journey that provides struggle as I am moving in this direction. And Amy's journey is also providing. I mean, you don't get better by, you know, what do we say? Like the sailors don't become great sailors on calm seas.
Right.
You know, so as your spirit is constantly seeking expansion, you are going to be faced with challenges. And whether the struggle is in nutrition or it's in making money or finding a great relationship or overcoming health obstacles, it doesn't matter. If you're on your own personal journey, you understand the point of challenges and struggle, and then you have compassion for other people. So that is a huge piece to the puzzle, is that you're recognizing that, you know, you're doing your own work and you're overcoming your own internal struggles. And then that just creates that passion or not passion, but compassionate.
Which makes them even more supportive.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for listening and thanks for joining me today. This was great. I love having these podcasts with you. It's a lot of fun to collaborate with you and stuff. And I also want to extend a huge thank you for being my support system for all these years. And thank you for keeping your eyes open, even though I think she was sleeping inside and her eyes were open while she listened to me talk about my many, many discoveries of all the books and courses and stuff that I've read and been a part of on my own learning journey. So I appreciate you.
Well, you are welcome, my love.
Thank you.
I appreciate you and all the support. I feel very, very, very lucky to have found you and for us to share the love and support that we share. It is, and I think everybody should have it. I think we're very, very,
totally.
I want to say we're very, very lucky, and we are. And I won't say that we work hard. We're just very aware and very open.
Yeah.
And because of all the knowledge that we both have, then sometimes it's not a surprise to me that other people don't make it. But that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast. Maybe that should be one. If that sounds like an interesting topic to you, send us a message and let us know if you want us to talk about the successes of our relationship. But communication is definitely one of them. But supporting each other is also huge. So thanks for listening. And Amy, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And, if you ever need support out there, know that we are here and ready and open and willing to be able to support you on this journey. We have coaching programs that are coming up. Of course, a podcast. I have over 300 episodes now teaching you different tools and techniques to try to extend the success or shorten the struggle to your success. Mm-hmm. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. And if you were inspired by this episode and are looking for healing, transformational growth, and a community to show up in, then please join me on Facebook under Jen Mac, JenMac. Friend me and follow me. You can also reach out to me via Messenger to see when my next program begins so we can work together to bring about your healing, deepen your connections, and start to create your bold, beautiful life. Also, if you are inspired by my podcast, please share your opinion in a review so others can be inspired too. Keep growing, going, and transforming, and keep looking for those nuggets of inspiration.